On this episode of AV Week, CompView has been acquired by Diversified. We look at virtual reality in the world of audio video, and which should you choose, a traditional AV transport or video over IP? All this and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 301, recorded Friday, June 2nd, 2017. International AV. Support for AVNation is brought to you by Kramer, AV Beyond the Box, and by Audio, a leading manufacturer of professional PTZ cameras, Pro AV solutions, and UCC integration systems. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tom Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about that very thing, I am incredibly excited about this show. It's something I wanted to do for a while, and hopefully I'll be able to do again. First up and foremost, 3 out of our 4 guests are from across the pond in England, UK, Brexitania, depends on how you want to look at that. First and foremost, Mr. Clive Caldwell from AV Magazine. Welcome, sir.
Hello, and thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely, sir. Also with us is my buddy and pal, Kevin McLaughlin. How are you, sir?
I'm good, and it's great to be on with you, too.
All right, and not last, but Neville Bounds also is from Feltec, an integrator, Feltec rather, an integrator over in London. How are you, sir?
Yeah, hi Tim. Very much. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me on the show.
Absolutely. And last but not least, name is Bobby Schwartz from Starin Marketing here in the States. How are you, sir?
Wonderful, Tim. Long-time watcher, first-time caller. Glad to be here.
Thank you. For those of you watching overseas, that is a reference to a national talk show host here, so not going to get political. All right. Let's kick this off here. First and foremost, guys, real quick, this happened yesterday. We're recording this on June 2nd. This comes to us from our buddies over at Commercial Integrator. Diversified has purchased CompView, a founding member of the Global AV Partnership. The CompView specifically is based out of Portland, Oregon. By doing this and by purchasing CompView, Diversified has increased their employees to 1,300 people in 8 different divisions. I mention this because 2 things. First of all, of CompView's arrangement and involvement in the global partnership, but also to kind of get a perspective from all 4 of you on how mergers and acquisitions in general. I mean, this is not the first, nor will it be the last merger and acquisition, both in the States and beyond, both from an integration standpoint and a manufacturer standpoint. Last fall we had Samsung and Harman. A year before that, we had AMX/Harman purchasing SVSI. The year before that, we had AMX being purchased by Harman. So, and that's a weird little Russian doll syndrome on those companies specifically. But Bobby, I want to start with you on this, and then get the other perspectives from a distributor. You've got manufacturer A suddenly being purchased by manufacturer B, and maybe you have a relationship with one and not the other. Or specifically about Diversified and CompView, one's your client, one's you're not, one isn't, right? And maybe the purchasing, the acquiring company is not your client. How do you guys handle that when it comes to mergers and acquisitions?
So there's 2 ways to really look at that, and one of the key things that in mergers like this, we've been seeing them all the time. Here in the States, we've seen acquisitions of AV companies by IT, and then AV companies getting stronger and stronger, and we've had to deal with both. Yeah. Really, it comes down to making sure you're agile in the business, because it's about the relationships between the 2 companies and not just moving boxes per se. Because if you're just moving boxes and somebody's procurement's going through another company, you lose that business. And when you're looking at juggernauts of this size, when it's Diversified and CompView, you could lose a huge portion of your business right away. So it's about offering an extra value and really having the relationships built between the customers. And with the manufacturers, making sure you have that same appeal when they make those acquisitions, because let's face it, times are changing in our industry. We're seeing more and more of these acquisitions accelerate. If you're not agile to move to meet those needs of the new conglomerates, you just get left in the dust.
All right, Neville, I want to pick up on what Bobby said there, speaking about conglomerates and competing against conglomerates. When you've got two companies that come together like this, how do you compete against that? How do you diversify, or wrong choice of word, but differentiate yourself against a huge company like that?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, Tim. And in fact, this happened to us, let me think now, probably 4 or 5 years ago, where we had a couple of large UK-based systems integrators come together due to an acquisition or merger. And at the time, we were just 25 people. We're now 60, but at the time, we were 20, 25 people. And this gave us quite a big problem. But actually, as it's turned out, although those companies are still doing very well, we've been able to pick up some business against them, mainly because we are slightly smaller. And I think that the people that, or clients of ours that have spoken about it, have said actually we prefer to deal with a slightly smaller company on certain kinds of projects. But actually from the two integrators that merged, what happened really was that one of them effectively came off the bid list. So from an end user perspective, they had to look elsewhere for new vendors.
That's actually a very good, nice transition, because the next person I want to talk to about this is Kevin. When it comes to bid list, right? And you've got, talking with a consultant friend of mine yesterday, he's out of San Francisco, and this impacts him and his clients directly. So Kevin, when you've got somebody you have two companies, they're both on your bid list, and like Neville said, one effectively comes off because the two are now one. Is it something where you go out and actively look for more people to put in your bid list just to get a competitive field, or is it something where you go, okay, now these two companies are now my one supplier?
Well, I mean, as you know, this industry is a lot about people, and because as a tech manager, what is really relatively small organization, I like to build relationships with the suppliers, so especially integrators, obviously. And what Neville said rings true with myself, because I think the integrator he was talking about is one I've worked with quite extensively before. And I think what happens is they can grow so big that the relationships you held with individuals and teams are basically pulled apart. And in the end, you're dealing with a new team every time you have a project. So I think from my point of view, it's a negative. It certainly changes the integrator overall, so you don't have anything like you had before. So it changes their attitude towards their own customers. The one, for example, that Nev was referring to, I think immediately finished with education and focused on the larger corporate global. Yeah. And Neville's right, from a point of view of somebody like Feltec, they can focus more on that relationships, and when you have a service contract with a supplier and you see the familiar faces coming around to save the day, you build relationships, you work together. From my point of view, that's the only way to work. So bigger is not better, as far as I'm concerned.
All right, Mr. Caldwell, we'll let you wrap this up and allow you to kind of give us the 50,000 foot view. Whether it's integrators coming together and eliminating competition in essence, or it's we mentioned Harman /AMX/Samsung or other mergers and acquisitions. Right, we're sitting about the 1 year anniversary of Barco picking up Medialon. How does that impact the industry, right? We've talked a lot about competitiveness, and price is an issue, but so is, to Kevin's point, so is that consistency, so is that personal relationship. So what do all these mergers and acquisitions kind of leave us at the end of the day?
Well, it's a very mixed bag, isn't it? I mean, I write for the industry as the industry's magazine, but our main focus is for end users. I mean, Barco took over Iozono. What's happened to Iozono? Disappeared without trace, and we were the only magazine that covered that for the first time for 4D sound. And it was a very innovative company. Project design, the acquisitions have somehow disappeared beneath the way. So it's very much a mixed bag. But there are two ways of looking at this. One is, if you're a global user and you're looking for massive global support, you are looking to much larger more multi-skilled enterprises to support you. And clearly AV doesn't have that. We're going through that point where companies are going to have to amalgamate. Look at distribution. That's been transformed at the moment by these huge amalgamations of companies. At the other end of the market, therefore, you've got users who are ceasing to be, they're losing a bit of contact with the people they were familiar with in the old days. They don't feel as though they're a smaller fish in a bigger pond. And the people they built a relationship with are either moving on or they're doing other things. And we're getting into that sort of neverland of not having proper service. It is a relationship building thing. But unfortunately, where you're looking at AV, it is going the big global route. And we're going to see a lot of these mergers. I'm looking at one at the moment, which is I'm not supposed to be talking about, which is a major company about to be acquired, and they're going through due diligence. And that would be amazing acquisition. But we're going to see more of these.
I know you're not supposed to talk about it, but is it a manufacturer or an integrator?
It's two manufacturers.
God love you. I love.
Both based in the States.
Okay.
Impact in the UK. Let's put it that way.
Are they? I'm going to get as much out of him as I can. Is it on the East Coast or the West Coast?
Oh, I don't know. I'm terrible at geography.
All right.
But there's some big. Don't forget, I've come from IT, so it's sort of the consolidation or the having to move up. Providing all this major, more sophisticated support, which we'll go on to probably with over IP, is sort of coming our way massively. And the AV has always had the problem with size and companies being able to be integrated with the bigger contracts and be able to support. I mean, Neville's part of the GPA, and that's provided a lot of benefit for companies in their own countries to provide that support and contact. And you need help and support in what are ecosystems these days. You're looking. I think the companies who are supplying kit and services are going to be very different companies in the next few years. With IT, it's gone managed services route. They're no longer tin providers. So I think we'll see that sort of general transition in AV eventually over the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to your point though is we have two things going on. You have the global part, right? You have folks like Goldman Sachs or law firms that are all over the globe that want that global support, and so mergers and acquisitions like this make sense, or the things like the global partnership makes sense. PSNI announced this week that they're going international, and things like that's going to help. But then you've got folks like Neville, who's got a great relationship with Kevin. At least I hope you do. Otherwise, this analogy is not going to work. And you guys can focus on, Kevin and his organization and other organizations that are smaller that don't necessarily need a global reach. They don't need an international reach. They just want you to take care of them, right?
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Tim. And actually, we've found over the last year or so at Feltec that spending more time with large accounts, people that do a lot of business with us, actually we get to know them a lot better. They get to know us better as well, and it makes for a much better relationship. And of course, our sales team are always very keen to have as many customers as possible. But my role really, as the key account director, is someone that focuses on a smaller number of accounts. But actually, I believe we get as much. Not just business, but trust and relationship from those people compared to doing lots of business with lots of people, which may be just spreading everything a bit too thin, possibly.
No, it goes back to the old adage about business is people buy from people, not from organizations or numbers.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
All right, let's bring up Clive's company's AV magazine, avinteractive.com if you're on the website. You guys did a story about VR and specifically about VDC. They did an installation in Thorpe Park using a VR ghost train, quote unquote, even scarier. Clive, I'm going to start with you since it's your article.
Yeah.
Where does virtual reality, VR, belong in the world of audio video?
Well, it needs to be out there. It's all part of storytelling. I've got mixed bag view. I saw VR in the early 80s, and it was sort of immersive. We're in actually big pods when we first experienced it. I thought, well, this is just amazing, And it gave you an incredibly immersive, incredible experience. Now, so many years on, it's beginning to work, but there's a couple of factors. It's a headset thing and the single experience, when we're moving into a multifactorial experience arena with big environments and everything else, it's still a singular experience in my view. But it's something necessary. So I think VR is a transition we're going through. AR, augmented reality, is actually getting more traction at the moment than VR is. It's still very much that novelty technology, even though, you know, it's dropped in price thanks to Samsung. I thought by Christmas we'd have lots of these cheap headsets around. So, but it's still very much that individual person. You go on here and you've got individuals experience this great thing. It's fantastic for museums. I think we still need to work on that environment, that experience that is more inclusive with everybody, you know. So I tend to look at all these technologies with, we're on a journey with these things, you know. Let's see how they materialize and how business in fact starts to use them. I think, you know, we're halfway through. It's taken years to get this stuff established. It's been so expensive. So in a way, with all new technologies, I'm a bit skeptical. You know, I do like my gadgets, but I'm not a complete idiot when it comes to new tech. You know, it's got to be based in the world of business for it to be really coverable for me. I don't sort of cover everything willy-nilly. But occasionally, you know, you come across these sort of stories here which actually light your fire. Johnny Burns at Thorpe Park, he's a very impressive individual. You know, he got his experience at Disney resorts in his youth, and that really what got him into AV. Yeah. He was so impressed by everything he saw there. It inspired him enormously. Came back to the UK and made a career out of it. So, you know, it's one of those things that AV, I always go on about the effect of AV rather than technology, what it does to people, and just it's that end product of it. So if VR does that as a purpose, that's fantastic. So I tend not to dwell individually on the technology, but I want how you're supporting this, how you're integrating into a bigger environment. These are the challenges now that bigger corporates actually begin to do. They want to include this stuff to make their environments more sexy, more inclusive, more interesting to spur on creative individuals and give them tools to do different things, you know, or do things differently rather. So in a way, it's part of a bigger picture for me.
Well, and I want to bring Kevin in on this because, you know, from the tech manager standpoint and you dealing with the people who are actually using your facilities and using your systems, is this something, to Clive's point, is this something where, you know, this is going to become more and more integrated, or is it kind of a one-off, you know, here's our special room that we get to do VR in?
Well, I mean, Clive is absolutely right. It's about the user experience and even the purpose of it, as Clive said. I mean, from my point of view, we're a conference and meetings venue, which is about medical education. So it's what does it bring to the end user? I mean, how does it actually enhance education? We have a planned conference in a few months where there'll be 300 attendees, and Samsung are providing the headsets. And it'll be really interesting to see how that fits into an all-day conference. That's just a segment of it. I'm going to be fascinated actually to see how we move into the virtual reality segment, then move out again and see how it blends in with what is basically your normal sort of didactic conference.
So hang on, you're doing a conference with 300 people with virtual reality interspersed throughout the day.
There's going to be one session. Okay. I really hope there's not too much tossing about and looking behind, because they may get into trouble in those tight little seats. I mean, that's another thing about virtual reality. That I was at a BBC event recently where they were talking about furniture being part of the experience, and like Clive said, it's a very individual experience. You start thrashing about, you'll obviously you'll end up hitting somebody sitting next to you, etc. Yeah. But I mean, seriously though, we have looked at the opportunities within medical education, for example, in surgery. So your virtual reality or your 360 video, you're in, you know, there with the surgeon. You're getting a view that you wouldn't have, you're not able to have, because everybody can't crowd into a surgery. But also, one we were looking at had added augmented reality as well into that. So within your reality, you had slides, you had information, there was branding on the floor, on the ceiling from sponsors. So it was a real hybrid mix. And I can really see that working within that kind of genre, you know. But from a general point of view, I think to try and move from somewhere where you're in a group of people in a meeting interacting and then all putting headsets on and having an individual experience, it's a tough one to imagine really working. I'm really looking forward to the conference we've got to see how it works out.
I'm gonna bug. When is the conference? Because I'm gonna bug you when it's over. September. All right. Because I'm fascinated now. Neville, if there's a business case for this, can you make a business case for virtual reality in an AV space?
Oh, sure. No question about it, Tim. I mean, this happened with a client of ours. In fact, actually, before I joined Feltec back in 2008 in the automotive sector, and they wanted to find a better way of designing vehicles. Ford have done this over at Dearborn very successfully. Over your side of the pond, Jaguar Land Rover have done it very successfully, and many others too. So they're not building clay models all the time. Obviously, it's a one-to-one experience. It's not a one-to-many experience. But actually, all of that technology came out of the gaming environment in terms of high-speed graphics cards and this kind of thing, and fast SSD type drives. So normally things that come out of the gaming sector do find their way into the professional sector, and they are normally high performance solutions as well. So I'm very interested to see how this can be taken a stage further. As I say, this is nearly 10 years ago, so what's coming next I think will be very interesting indeed.
Mm-hmm. Bobby, last word on this. When you're talking with your clients, and then your clients again are integrators, how do you help them along with integrating new technology, whether it's virtual reality or something new that's coming down the pipeline that your manufacturers are bringing to you?
So in virtual reality in particular, I think what we're looking at here is it's right on a cusp, and what's going to help define that is there's a lot of niche applications, but for that widespread rollout, it's going to be about creating a generational expectation, meaning we don't expect it now. Think 3D.
Okay.
All the money in the world was poured into it. You had to wear headwear. We all know how well that took off globally.
Yeah.
All the money in the world poured in. What's different and what has me excited about virtual reality is having more potential is that I've seen going to trade shows, especially educational end user focus, a ton of virtual reality focused education, K-12 in particular, for classroom use. And what's going to define that is a lot of people coming out with the services and content to support classroom learning. Now, does that mean it's going to take off tomorrow in corporate world? No, but that's going to create a user experience that's going to be an expectation, if this takes off in education correctly, that in the next 10 years, you're going to have people start coming into the high schools, coming out of the lower education systems of college with that expectation. And that's really, that expectation of a generational trend is really what drives a lot of our markets and really changes the paradigms in an industry. 3D didn't have that, but I can see that starting to happen. It'll be really interesting to watch the education market to see if virtual reality takes off. And that's really how we kind of navigate now, is we're working a lot with educators, education, to help navigate, is this something we can do? And content's going to be key in that, just like in digital signage.
Yeah, and I'm glad you used the 3D analogy, because that's exactly it. Unfortunately, where we sit right now with virtual reality, I kind of see it with 3D. Neville mentioned the fact that it's a one-to-one experience. Sometimes 3D did feel like that, like a one-to-one, because you've got glasses on, even more so with the goggles on. So, all right, last but not least here from our friends over at AV Network, 3 reasons. This comes to us by Greg Aradjan and Diane Hagen. Easy for me to say. 3 reasons experienced integrators embrace AV over IP. They go on to talk about the AV over IP movement. I'm not going to sit here and endorse one protocol over another. Talk to me at Infocom if you want to hear my thoughts on the individual ones, and I've written several articles on them. Neville, I want to start with you on this, because this article specifically calls out integrators and how some integrators are still old school, right? They prefer copper, right? They prefer running not quite RGB HV, but running getting a source and destination connection here. Is it Yes, go ahead.
It's a real difficult one, isn't it? In the perfect world for us, I think we'd really like to have a proper BNC or proper XLR or all the rest of it, whether it's copper or fiber. Of course, we are in the IT world, and we us at Feltec, 10 years ago, we probably weren't as focused as we should have been on that. And we certainly are now. But of course, that doesn't make it any easier. And actually, fault finding in the IT world, it is quite tricky. I think we've had a situation a number of times where, especially things like HD-based tea, as an example, not all of the manufacturers have supported all of the functions. And I know that one of our guys spent half a day trying to fault find a power on-off function, only to find that the projector manufacturer didn't support it. So we had to run a separate RS-232 cable just to power it on and off, which was a complete it made a mockery of the whole technology, really. But we're not there yet. I mean, and I think we've still got a lot of people in the AV world, certainly in the UK, and maybe elsewhere as well, that need better, IP type skills in order to get the best out of these systems. And yeah, it is challenging. There's no doubt about it. But I personally speaking, I still quite like the real connection with a bit of cable rather than the IP environment. But I fully accept that on the large scale systems, that's the only way of distributing this kind of signal around.
All right, Bobby, same kind of question to you when you're talking to your integrators, right? How do you assess, I guess, the best need of the system that they're calling you about?
We in our company have been blessed. We've really focused on a lot of the AV over IP products. We've got a good portfolio of that, and that's by design, mainly because we've seen a trend. When you look at Gartner's research, the IT market's forecast for $3.5 trillion this year. People want simplicity. That user expectation I mentioned before. They want, look what home automation looks like now. You can, for $400, you can have voice control of all of your functions in your home, and you can program it yourself. There's expectations changing. So when we're looking at how the AV world, to me, it's a world of totally disparate communications protocols. One manufacturer makes this, some others jump on and license it. Another one makes this, and it's complicated. We have to get out of our own way of being complicated, because the user expectations now, when I can go to Amazon, spend $50 and home control my entire place with voice commands, and it costs $80,000 to do that in my office, we have to find a way to make up for that expectation. So over IP just becomes the standard communications, where we're seeing IT budgets, IT decision makers lumping in AV technologies. And if we can't play nicely, they're going to go what's easiest to integrate with their $7 million spend when the AV budget's $600,000 to that. We're a small portion of a much bigger pie now, and we're just seeing that accelerate as the expectation changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So
you've got to navigate it.
Just for the record, if you're spending $80,000 on your programming, you're spending too much, and you need to call me. All right, Clive, we'll get your overarching view. We're going to see it. We're recording this on June 2nd. A number of us are going to be in Orlando for InfoComm in about a week and a half. You're going to see some more protocols coming out. HD-based T has started making some noise about doing stuff over IP. They announced it at ISE this year. They're going to have some more stuff at InfoComm. You've obviously got SDVOE, you've got Crestron, you've got AMX/SVSI. Easy for me to say. Clive, where do we come down on this when it comes to integrators? And we'll get Kevin's take on this as an end user in a second.
Well, you just highlighted there in the last sentence what a nightmare it is. Every time I mention A over IP, that everybody runs for the hills, and great panic and lots of smoke as the door closes, But from an end user point of view, it's a no-brainer, I'm afraid. We're in a network, bigger environments. I think it's good for AV. The problem I find is addressing the skills issue and supporting it all. Where those people going to come through, where the upgrades going to come from. If you're centrally monitoring anything and updating software over a big multi-application estate, then you've got to do it via that. Networks, for somebody who's covered IT for 25 years, it's the next natural step. We're in a digital world. Companies now are moving very quickly and changing in shape and need and integrating all kinds of stuff. You can't avoid it. It's incredibly complex. We find ourselves bogged down. I can understand the issues here, but everywhere I look, I'm seeing ecosystems, lots of products that have to get along with each other, and that in itself is probably that mid-transition into this bigger world. If people are not quite sure how they're going to do that, where they're going to make money, because they've been used to a proprietary individual world where they're quite safe and they can make their margins, and it's very straightforward to maintain and so on. And there's nothing more reassuring than a bit of cable. But ultimately, we're into that netherworld of this incredibly, you just can't see where the joins are anymore, and that's the worst nightmare for AV. They're just on the end of the abyss, about to jump over. They know they have to do it, but they're not quite sure what's at the bottom of the pit. To have to reassure you, I think it will open up lots more opportunities for people, because we call it AVRIP. I mean, we love our acronyms and everybody else, and I suppose Infocom's going to be full of them. All these so-called alliances, which are SDVOE, probably very good, actually. I think it's probably a positive one. I need to know more about where they're at now. But from an end-user perspective, and I think we have to focus on that, really, is it's great. It elevates AV into where it should be. It'll give IT something to think about. They'll sort of realise that they have to include AV, and that's the time to promote what the good stuff that AV does. They're still calling it the front end to IT, when in fact, as far as I'm concerned, IT is one component of an AV environment, So it depends which end you're coming from. But the integrators and where to get the skills is probably the main thing for me, how to differentiate yourself and where that mix and how that mix is managed, really. That's the difficulty, obviously.
All right, Mr. Kevin, you're going to have the last word on this as the end user, as the technology manager. What do you want? What is it that you? I almost sound snarky a little bit, but what as the tech manager, what do you want when it comes to an integration and putting things on the network or rather not?
Well, one thing that Clive touched on there was price, and obviously from an end user point of view, a large matrices cost in comparison to a switch or two is a huge difference. I mean, I recently went to look at the University of Hertfordshire, who put in a complete network system on Wirestorm, and the savings there from using a Crestron DM system were 6 figures. So from a university's point of view, it's a no-brainer. Having said that, Nev's right in saying we're not there yet, and I'm glad the University of Hertfordshire went there before we did. And I know that I probably won't be buying a huge matrices anytime soon, but I'm glad I haven't got a large project, for a little while longer, so I can just see how it plays out and choose the technology that's right for us.
Well, and also to go see other people's installations and see how all that works. That's a nice benefit.
Yeah, problem free. And actually, I saw a case study on the University of Hertfordshire recently, and what was important was that the IT manager was very much involved in the whole installation. And I think for example, here our IT department is outsourced, so it puts a layer in that might be quite difficult during the project. And this is the whole thing about educating the AV team in IT. But having said that, the IT manager there was talking about how they put a sort of safety net in the network, which they didn't really need, and it could actually have been, as we say, on the network. And I found that quite fascinating to think, well, we're just about there, really.
And you're right. It depends on your workflow and how it works. You guys mentioned the fact that you outsource your IT. An old friend that used to work for a university out on the West Coast, they had, I think, last count he had before he left, they had 25 different IT departments on their campus. And it was a large campus, but still 25 different IT departments to maneuver through. So, all right, gentlemen, that is going to do it for us. Thank you guys so much. Mr. Bobby Swartz from Starin, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
How do people get a hold of you and or Starin Marketing?
Oh, you can find me. I'm easy Bobby at starin.biz, or just follow me on Twitter at the Bobby Swartz.
The Bobby Swartz.
The one and only.
That is pretty awesome. I need one of those. Neville, Mr. Neville, thank you, sir. I appreciate it, dude.
You're welcome, Tim. Thanks very much indeed for asking me on. The Feltec website is www.feltec.co.uk, and on Twitter, I'm NevTech27.
NevTech27. All right. Mr. McLaughlin, I finally got you on a podcast, buddy. Thank you, man.
I know. Great to be on. Twitter at Kev_McLaughlin on LinkedIn too.
Also, talk about real quickly about the AV user group that you were part of too.
Absolutely. Yes, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
The AV user group obviously is for end users, and it was originally mainly for technology managers, those that have the buying power, the specification power. But really, it's spreading now. It's global. It's New York, Hong Kong, UK, soon to be San Francisco, and the website is avusergroup.com. And it's free to be a member, and the benefits are huge, are great value, and it's great to be part of it.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised when you guys started expanding into the U.S. and anxiously awaiting to see how it works out. Unfortunately, I'm no longer a tech manager, so I don't think they'll let me in. So, Mr. Clive, thank you, sir.
That's all right. In fact, you're an AV personality now, Tim. Aren't you?
I am no such thing. No such thing.
We'll make you on Infocom.
There we go. How do people find you and AV Magazine? And you guys are having an event at Infocom in a couple of weeks.
We are. Well, I spend most of my time trying to avoid people, but difficult to miss. Yes, we're invading the Hard Rock Hotel, I think, one night. So I think half the world seems to be coming to that.
Yeah.
AV Magazine is on avinteractive.com, but and I'm Clive.Coldwell, C-O-U-L-D, Coldwell at metropolis.co.uk. But we've done a US issue for Infocom.
Excellent.
We've focused on 3 or 4 big designers at this Tide conference. And the theme is really inspirational AV, really, and not focusing too much on componentry, but trying to broaden people's minds on just the great things that the industry and what the technology can do in the right hands. So it should be showing the best of what we can do.
All right, and people can get that at the Infocom show?
They certainly can, as long as they arrive. We will be bringing some issues ourselves, but it should be arriving on a boat fairly soon, I'm hoping.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website if you would, please. AV Magazine, yeah. AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You can find our Infocom section. It's already up and running, and there's a ton of stuff there, including a little game that we're doing on social media for those of you that are going. It's called Find AVNation, and you go around and take pictures. Also, our AV selfie is up and running. Heard the song for that just the other day. It has a very cool theme. So Phil Cordell, our buddy, Hi-Fi did a really good job on that. So all that is at our website, avnation.tv. Also, you can check out our underwriters. They are the folks that help us do what we do. So we ask you to check those out. And also a couple new programs coming up. We have a brand new one. It's every other week. It's called the AV Profession. And we look at the business of AV, things like return on investments and key performance indicators, hiring and keeping good talent, what done is, and how to avoid doing jobs more than once. So that's also on the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.